Hi, this is Nick Katko, and welcome to today's webinar, Creating a Continuous Cost Improvement System. I'm glad to be back doing webinars and um, glad you're all here. For those of you who attended the live webinar, you're going to notice this is a little different because to be totally honest, I forgot to turn the recording on, so I am actually doing a re-recording of this webinar. The picture that you see on the screen is of my retired mentor and colleague, Brian Maskell. I wanted to put that up because he's the reason I am here today doing this kind of work. And unfortunately, he passed away right before Christmas in December. So just wanted to honor him. All right. So there's a few changes in um, the, hold on one second. Okay. Few changes in the way I'm doing the webinars. In the past, I've done um, GoToMeeting. I moved to Zoom. So um, to get a copy of the presentation, and since this is a re-recording, uh, go to the Google Drive that you see, and that will also appear in the emails that go out tomorrow. And if you want a certificate of completion, you can simply complete the template that I send. That's also in the Google Drive. And then you have your certificate. A recording of this webinar will be on my YouTube channel tomorrow, and that is the link to get that. And all this information will also be in the follow-up emails. So today's agenda is what you see on the screen. You know, over the past few months, I've done some events and discussions about cost management. The Lean Global Connection in November, I did a presentation. I talked also with my friend John Allen, who used to work at the Toyota plant in Lexington, about how Toyota manages their costs. And I guess I came to the realization that if you really want to have a good cost management system, you got to sort of think of it as a continuous cost improvement system as opposed to traditional approaches. So the four parts to today's webinar, we're going to go over some principles. We're going to look at thinking habits and how thinking habits have to change. We're going to talk about measurements in terms of how to measure costs and practices how to put these things into play. So first, I wanted to look at traditional cost management practices and explain why they are not really ideal in lean companies. First is the culture. Most traditional cost management cultures are top down, centralized decision making. For example, senior leaders and owners and accounting and finance sort of create budgets. Uh, there might be some bottom up work in the budgets, but they basically set what they want the numbers to be or what they want the costs to be. So everything's a little bit siloed, little to no collaboration. I'm sure if you've worked on annual budgeting, you know, you understand what a cumbersome process that is and how sometimes the numbers that are submitted from managers up to the company just arbitrarily cuts them. There's also an element of certainty in the drivers of costs. And what I mean by that is, okay, we got this all figured out. We know what's driving our costs and we know what we have to control. And unfortunately, a traditional cost management culture focuses a lot on cost cutting, especially if sales are down or there's maybe a little bit of an economic slowdown or an industry slowdown, or we have to cut our costs. And cost cutting, I understand why it goes on. I don't agree with how it's done. There might be some temporary benefits to cutting costs, but usually they're not sustainable because they're just done arbitrarily and from the top down. I once did work at a company many, many years ago where they did the traditional reduction in force, and every department had to put up so many people to cut, or there was like a formula. So this department had to cut 3 people, this department had to cut 2 people, and managers just had to decide who. And so the company went through that process. But what was interesting is that within weeks, that a lot of the people that were let go, nobody knew what they did. And so they actually brought some of those people back as contractors to get the work done. So, those are the aspects of a traditional cost management culture that really don't work well in lean companies. Another aspect of this is the traditional view of costs. Okay, you have your fixed cost, you have your variable cost, those are your total costs. You subtract that from your sales and you get your profit. Everything is, again, certain. We know what fixed is, we know what variable is. The thing about costs is they're an outcome. Okay, when you get an income statement, the costs are historical. They tell you what happened. Now you can look at the cost and explain why the cost was a certain number. You can't really change it. You can't do anything about it. You can explain it. That's about all you can do. Now, the explanation is important for financial reporting purposes, but not for cost management purposes. Costs are based on actions, operating behavior, and decisions. And that's really how we want to approach this in a continuous cost improvement system. So these traditional practices have a tendency to sabotage lean if they're kept in place. If you think about labor, and as I mentioned, reducing headcount. If you reduce headcount, it's going to stop continuous improvement. And it basically makes the whole respect for people a lie in the company. Why do I say that? You want your people to do continuous improvement, eliminate waste. You create more capacity. If you then reduce headcount intentionally because you have that available capacity, the people that are left are not going to want to do any more continuous improvement because they associate it. In fact, I learned this in my first CFO job where we hired a vice president of manufacturing who had lean experience. And when he came in, he sat down with the management committee and especially the owner of the company and said, I need you to publicly state and put it in writing that nobody will lose their job because of continuous improvement. Now, he clarified that and said, economic conditions are different. Now, the owner balked first at that, but then the vice president of manufacturing explained what I just explained about the association of that. And then eventually the owner came around and made those statements. As for material, cost cutting is, seeking out the lowest material price. What does that mean from a lean viewpoint? Well, and how it sabotages lean. Well, any supplier is going to give you a lower price if you buy a whole lot of their parts. That increases inventory. Also, you can find a supplier with lower prices but maybe they have poor performance in terms of on-time delivery, lead times, and quality. In terms of machines, you buy a machine, you know, you have to justify the purchase and the cash outflow by maximizing utilization and using it as much as possible. That leads to overproduction, excess inventory, poor delivery. Then there's budgets and variances, which is all about making the month. So it's basically about hitting the numbers rather than serving customers. Best example of that is in manufacturing, where it's getting close to the end of the month and the numbers don't look good. So let's build a little bit more inventory, or let's build orders ahead and put it in finished goods, absorb the overhead, and we'll make the bottom line look a little better. Now you can play that game, but eventually it catches up to you. So that's what we want to get away from. So let's start on the continuous cost improvement system, and let's talk about principles. First, what we want to do is have a lean culture. Now, this isn't just for the continuous cost improvement system, but it's really about the lean culture in general. And I'm going to start in the upper left. Collaboration, cross-functional collaboration. We want to have also the respect for people where, this is not, cost management is not just a finance function. It's about finance working with other groups in a collaborative manner to understand drivers of costs, to understand what can be done to manage those costs. So it requires respect for people. One thing I learned about Toyota is that they consider the most important people in the company those that are building the cars. They're doing the work. It's not the managers, it's not finance, it's not the executives. And so it's very, very important that there is this respect for the people who are doing the work, that they should be involved in helping manage costs. But it's in a different way than something like actual to budget. And we're going to talk about that. Learning, problem solving, and continuous improvement. Here's what I say about costs. If you really knew what was driving your costs, you would have taken care of it already. So it's about adapting a learning approach that we don't know everything. We need to dig deeper into what's driving our costs. We need to use PDCA, lean problem solving methodologies. We need to use continuous improvement activities to drive out what's causing our costs to be higher than we want. So it's a very collaborative environment. It is really about applying lean practices that are usually just done on the process, they are done on the process, but we want to introduce this cost element of how will these improvement activities help drive costs out of the business. Another principle is the economics of lean. Now, if you've attended webinars in the past or heard me speak, I talk a lot about this. I also talk a lot about it in the book, in my books, that, you know, continuous improvement, eliminating waste. Okay, if you eliminate something, you're going to stop doing something, or you're going to do less of it. What do you get out of that? You create capacity or time. This is why people call lean a time-based strategy. So you have this time. Now you can use the time to deliver more value. You can also use the time to achieve cost reduction. Either one is a good thing financially. One example is, in my case as a CFO, excuse me, in the accounting department of the manufacturing company. And we applied lean thinking in the accounting function, eliminated a lot of waste, created capacity. And while we were doing that, a few people voluntarily left the accounting department. I think, one person, um, I think maybe a couple people left and took jobs at another company, not because of continuous improvement, because it was just a better opportunity for them. Another person worked in accounting and wanted to move into customer service. And every time this happened, we didn't replace them. So the head count in accounting went down. We were still able to get all of our work done and more because the business was growing. So that's just an example of how you achieve cost reduction over time through the economics of lean. So how does lean and cost reduction work? Okay. One is you might achieve some actual cost savings through continuous improvement. For example, if you conduct an improvement event or improvement events and improve quality, you're going to reduce your scrap expense. You can see that on the financial statements. In other cases, you may make improvements that avoid incurring future costs. Now, you're not going to really see anything short term on the financial statement, but you'll see it in performance measurements. For example, if you reduce the changeover time on a machine from, say, 2 hours to 30 minutes, you pick up 1 hour and 30 minutes per changeover. That's not going to change your machine costs. You create capacity, maybe you can sell more and you'll get more contribution margin. But over time, you might not have to replace that machine. So you're avoiding maybe buying another machine. Lean problem solving. Now, I read these two books that you see, Four Types of Problems, and by Art Smalley, People Solve Problems by Jamie Flinchbaugh. They're both excellent books. I highly recommend them. And it they they both talk about problem solving. They are lean books, but they don't get into a whole lot of technical lean activities. It's about people solving, it's about problem solving. And so these books influenced me in the fact that a lot of lean accounting is about problem solving, and a continuous cost improvement system is also about problem solving. So it's important to understand how problem solving can be part of this continuous cost improvement system. So let me just review, like troubleshooting problems. They occur during the regular work. If you have standard responses when they arise, then what you do is you can minimize the impact of that problem and maybe prevent it from really having an impact on cost. It's a countermeasure or reaction. Gaps from standards. So you have certain standards of performance, such as schedule attainment. How many products are we supposed to make today? Did we make them, yes or no, to meet customer demand? If we didn't make them, why not? Because if you're not hitting your schedule, you're not meeting customer needs, which means you're probably going to have to spend more time over the long haul to meet those needs, like work overtime. So the idea is we want to use troubleshooting and gap from standards and understand what's going on. And we want to measure those problems. We don't want to measure the cost. If you measure the problem, you identify the problem, you solve the problem, that will prevent the costs from going up or minimize how much they go up. Now, no standard. So process has no standard of performance. You want to create a standard. So this is putting something in place. And no standard really just means a lot of firefighting where people really don't know what to do. People do things differently, things like that. And I have done work at a company where there really wasn't any standard on setup and changeover. And everybody did a little bit differently. And what they kept doing, because everybody did a little bit differently and it was taking a long time, they threw more people at it. So they added extra setup people. That's raising costs. So create the standard to minimize the cost increases. Target condition is traditional continuous improvement or Kaizen events. You want to improve a standard. So you conduct planned improvement events. And what you're trying to do here in terms of costs is you're trying to prevent those costs from increasing in the future. So let's talk about thinking habits. Now, this is really the hard part of a continuous cost improvement system because of the traditional thinking habits about costs that are already in place in many companies. Okay, and so this is always the tough nut to crack. So the first thing you want to do is change thinking about costs. As opposed to fixed and variable costs, you want to take a process view of costs. Okay, any work activity, doesn't matter if it's in manufacturing, in healthcare, in accounting, in a service, you can either perform value-added activities or value-added work or non-value-added work or waste. And if you've ever been involved in value stream mapping or process mapping, you know that the amount of non-value-added work and waste is much, much greater than the value-added work. Okay. So if you think about it from an activity standpoint, you want to spend more time on value-added work, less time on the non-value-added work. Okay, so we want to look deep into the operating practices because it's sort of like a three-dimensional view between activities, time, and costs. And you could have value-added activities which meet customer needs. You can have non-value activities, some of which are necessary. They have to be performed for a business reason, or they're just pure waste and unnecessary. And so it's important for the people who do the work and even people like accounting and finance people, whether it's their work or looking at other people's work. What are we talking about here? Okay. And what do we want to try to accomplish? The downtime waste, which is defects, overproduction, waiting time, neglect of human talent, transportation waste, inventory, motion waste. and excess processing. We want to just eliminate that. We want to stop doing it as fast as we can. That will help reduce our costs. The non-value added necessary activities, we want to find the waste in them and lean them out. One example is in accounts payable, in fixing a defect. So you have an invoice, you can't process the invoice, but you have to figure it out because you got to eventually get that invoice paid. So there's a lot of non-value added. It's necessary to get the invoice fixed, but the activities are wasteful. So we try to figure out not how to fix the defect faster, but how can we prevent the defect from occurring? So when we take the activity view of costs, what we find if we embark on continuous improvement activities is that our costs in the short term remain the same, but we have less non-value added work and less waste, and we have more capacity. We continue to do that, and then over the long term, we get this actual cost reduction because we're taking that capacity, we're spending it on value added work rather than the non-value added work, and we make more profit. So in order to do this, we need to understand the cause-effect relationships where, operating performance and capacity performance really drives financial performance and drives what our costs are. It doesn't work the other way around. This is one of the reasons why top-down cost management doesn't work. Because, to be quite frankly, in a large company, the finance people really don't know how the work is getting done in other parts of the company. But the people who are doing the work, they understand, especially in a lean company, what's value added and what's not value added. And when you can incorporate that kind of thinking and have a collaborative environment, now you're going to get somewhere on managing your costs. But it's important that, when it comes to the process view of costs, that everybody is thinking the same way. So let's move on to measurements. I always like to tell people and companies, if you measure using the right numbers, you will drive the right thinking and you'll get the results that you want. And especially when it comes to cost management, you have to start with different numbers. Okay? Because you want to drive the correct thinking habits. People who work in companies, doesn't matter where they are, they understand numbers. They understand if this number moves in a certain direction, it's good. If this number moves in a certain direction, it's not good. And using the right numbers allows them to make the connections between what they're doing and what they're trying to improve, and is it moving the right numbers in the right direction? And not all these numbers are just simply the cost numbers. There, you'll see that there's performance indicators that also can be used to give people a forward-looking view of, am I doing the right things, or are we doing the right things to manage our costs? Because remember, costs are an outcome. So the first tool set of numbers is the value stream box score, which if you have heard me talk about or read any of the books, it's a good combination of measures that really drives the economics of lean in a value stream. Lean performance measurements, measuring how effective lean practices are being deployed and used in a value stream. A value stream P&L, value stream income statement. Value streams are the profit centers of a lean company. So what are the sales and what are the actual costs from a particular value stream? And then there's the measurement of capacity. How much time are we spending on productive value-added activities? How much time are we spending on the non-productive activities? And how much are we creating and making available through continuous improvement? Now, the beauty of the box score is you have operational performance, you have capacity performance, you have financial performance in one set of numbers. And it makes people understand or learn those relationships. You know, if we improve certain operating performance, we can measure that. Is there a financial impact? You have to think it through. There might be a direct financial impact. Maybe some costs do go down. If we make some improvement event and we create available capacity, is there a direct financial impact, or maybe will we be avoiding adding costs in the future? The other numbers that are important is measuring cost reduction. Okay. Lean companies recognize that most costs are fixed, not variable. So at the company level, measure actual costs or actual cost as a percentage of sales, contribution margin, gross margin, or specific costs. At the value stream level, you can measure actual cost as a percentage of sales or actual cost per unit. At the cell level, you want the relevant drivers of costs, like how many overtime hours, downtime, things like OEE. These are the measures you're trying to move. Okay, this is measuring cost reduction over time. We're not necessarily just looking at the pure numbers on the income statement. Okay, it is quite difficult to reduce your costs. Okay, because most of them are fixed. For example, you know, if you look at just labor dollars and you want to reduce labor dollars, what do? You get rid of people. If you get rid of people, you're also getting rid of your capacity. That's a problem, especially if there's work that has to get done. But if you look at labor as a percentage of sales, now you have to think about, you know, that ratio, labor over sales. You know, sales goes up 15%, you know, the labor cost is going to go up. We don't want it to go up by 15% because we want that percentage of labor to go down. Now that makes us think about what type of improvements do we have to make to create the capacity so that we can control the labor cost. One company I'm working with, they're beginning their fiscal year soon, and in their strategy deployment, you know, they want to manage their administrative costs through continuous improvement. So one of their company measures is administrative labor divided by sales. And they want that number, that ratio to go down. Whatever percentage it is, they want it to get better in the next few years. So measuring cost reduction is very, very important to drive the right thinking. So in general, if you look at labor costs, material costs, machine costs, and quality cost, you want the right operational focus in terms of measures that will result in the cost measure improving. Okay? Non-financial people understand operations, whether it's in manufacturing or accounting or healthcare. So give them good operational measures that if they move them in the right direction, the outcome, the labor costs, will get better. So labor, focus on improving productivity. What will happen? Your labor cost as a percentage of sales will go down. Material, focus on improving flow. What's the financial cost impact? Improving days of inventory. Now that's more of a cash flow issue, but it's still good. Machine costs, total preventative maintenance, and reducing changeover times. That will reduce your machine costs as a percentage of sales. Quality, focus on reducing defects and rework. What will the financial cost outcome be? Reduce scrap costs and improve days of inventory. So it's about establishing those relationships. Okay. And when I talked earlier about respect for people, there's the traditional thing about beating managers up about their costs or their budgets. This is different. Okay. We want them to really dive deep into how their part of the business runs and where the waste is. How do we improve productivity, for example, especially like in an administrative department or a service industry? And we know that if they improve productivity over time, that will result in labor costs being managed and controlled. So let's put it all together and talk about some practices. So this is incorporating everything we've talked about and sort of integrating it into Lean system. So I'm not going to take credit for how I'm explaining a typical Lean system because a couple of years ago I attended a Lean conference and James Womack spoke and he explained it this way and I thought it was just so simple and easy that I decided I'm going to use it. So please I'm not taking credit for this. There's three pieces to a basic Lean system. One is a planning system. Now you see an X matrix on there. It's hard to read, but it's not intended to be read. Just an example of strategy deployment. So, planning system, strategy deployment, Hoshin Kanri, something like that. You incorporate company Lean performance measurements into strategy deployment. That helps set the cost reduction targets. And it drives continuous improvement events that will help achieve the cost reduction targets. So I mentioned a few minutes ago the company that is looking at administrative costs as a percentage of sales. That's at the company level. But each administrative department will have that measure too. So it's going to force each administrative department to think about what type of improvement events should we focus on in the coming fiscal year to eliminate the waste in our particular function and keep our labor cost controlled. So you're really linking strategy to specific actions to improvement events. You also have a continuous improvement system. Okay, those are your continuous improvement events, Kaizen events, however they're managed. This is where value stream box scores come into play. You want to integrate the box scores with continuous improvement events. You want to measure the impact of all improvement events through box scores. What does this do? It helps value stream teams learn those cause-effect relationships between continuous improvement, lean operating practices, and how the box score moves and improves over time. The final piece of a lean system is daily lean management. So here what we want are cell performance measurements integrated with daily lean management practices. What will this do? Well, these daily these daily cell measurements are really the standards that you want a cell to hit in terms of performance. If you don't hit the standard, you have a gap. You want to understand what's the cause of the gap, how are we going to resolve that issue? And what you're doing is you're solving problems that are small, and you're trying to minimize the potential cost impact of those problems if they're not solved. So continuing on with daily lean management and gap from standards, here are some examples. If you measure schedule attainment, you're going to manage your labor cost. That's an outcome. Why? If you're hitting your schedule, you're doing the work that has to get done. If you're not hitting your schedule, you need to know why. Because if you continue to miss the schedule, eventually you're going to have to throw more labor at the cell to catch up. That could be overtime, that could be hiring temporary people, maybe hiring more people. Defect rate. Okay, you want to hit your defect rates. You don't want it to be variable. I'm not saying it's zero. Maybe it's a 5% defect rate. That's the standard. Again, if you have more defects, you're going to have to spend more time producing product to get the right amount out. That's going to cause your labor cost to go up. It'll cause your scrap cost to go up, and material, you're going to have to buy more material. Understanding your actual WIP inventory compared to plan. Again, you might have people searching for parts and pieces, or you're going to be buying more material. Then there's the drivers of costs, okay, which can impact many costs. Then there's safety and morale, okay? You think about having a safe environment and good morale. That does manage your labor cost. You're not hiring people, you're not training people, replacing people, and obviously everyone knows the cost of any kind of poor safety. Looking at value stream management and continuous improvement. Again, you have some basic value stream performance measurements. And you can see if you focus on time delivery, you will, in essence, be controlling your labor cost, and things like expedited shipping will go down. Your defect rate, same as with the cell. Lead time. If you're hitting your lead times, you will be managing your costs. Days of inventory. Okay, if you're managing your days of inventory, if your days of inventory are going down, you're going to be buying less material. You might need less space and less people. Okay. Maybe your material management function doesn't need as many people. Productivity, sales over hours worked, that controls your labor cost. And then we have safety and morale, continuous improvement participation rate. For the value stream measurements, it's the targets. It's how much they have to improve. Typically, that's like 10 or 20%. Now, material cost is a different kind of animal because material is variable. And if you're in manufacturing, if you sell more, you're going to have more material cost. So if you think about the basic material cost equation, price times quantity, you want to measure both. I'm sorry, not measure, manage both ends of the equation. So price, lean company wants the lowest price with the highest quality, best on-time delivery, and shortest lead times. Usage, you really want to manage the usage, reduce your lead times, reduce days of inventory, and improve quality. As a result, you'll improve the contribution margin. So the relationship between continuous improvement and labor cost reduction. Focus on improving productivity. Over the long run, you'll achieve some actual cost savings, decreasing overtime, maybe not replacing people through natural attrition, or promoting people and backfilling at a lower labor rate. Cost avoidance, moving people around from one value stream to another. The example I gave earlier about the person in accounting who moved into customer service. We didn't have to hire a customer service person, and we didn't have to hire another accounting person. That was a significant savings. Use people for continuous improvement or other options. Remember, you don't want to get rid of people because of continuous improvement. And continuous improvement in machine cost. Decrease the downtime, increase the uptime, reduce changeovers time. Actual savings, decreasing outsourcing. I work with a company that when demand, when work, when things got busy, they ran out of capacity, they had to outsource. What they did through continuous improvement is they created capacity and they were able to do more in-house and not outsource. That saves money. Improving, if you understand why your machines are down, if you improve that, you reduce your repair maintenance costs. If you have machines that are down or long changeovers, maybe you're running overtime on the machines, which means you're also paying your operators overtime. You might be able to decrease those costs. And then there's the cost avoidance of not having to purchase new machines. A personal experience on that is in the company I worked in, we had injection molding department, we may have had like 8 or 10 machines. And in the pre-lean days, we had long changeover and setup and high scrap, and we never had capacity. We always thought we had to buy more machines. We embarked on continuous improvement, significantly reduced scrap, significantly reduced the setup time, and we ended up having more capacity than we thought. And actually, what we did is we had to start selling that capacity and we became sort of like a contract manufacturer to use that capacity because we didn't want to get rid of the machines. So just to wrap up here, it's about financial thinking, okay? Lean financial thinking. A continuous cost improvement system uses the right numbers, box scores, and lean cost measurements, the right lean cost measurements to drive the thinking habits. What are the operational and financial relationships that we want people to understand? And this includes everybody in the company. This is not just for certain people. What are those true cause-effect relationships? The behavior we want to drive is continuous improvement. Continuous improvement activities do a whole lot of good things. They help companies serve customers better. They make work easier for people. There's a lot of benefits. Another benefit is cost management. The outcome, long-term cost reduction. So that wraps things up. If you'd like to learn more, I did an interview with my friend John Allen about Toyota's cost management system. There is the link to that. It's I don't know, 30, 40 minutes maybe. I have the lean accounting certification courses, which is another way to really learn more about lean accounting because you have to test your knowledge through some simple quizzes. You can go to the website and learn. If you have any questions about that, I can answer them. Obviously, then there's my books that are available on Amazon. If you have any more questions about a continuous cost improvement system, please feel free to contact me. And thanks for attending this webinar, and I hope to see you in a future webinar. Bye now.